Here we go. You
Oh,
got
I'm sorry.
No,
don't
keep
do
talking.
it. Can we do that another day? Can we do that another day?
You have to conform to a certain
Today is the
rule.
day.
Today is the day.
Today is
That's
the
why I
day.
was clarifying that he's saying that being capitalist represents being a good business person.
Right. And I took it
That's
that way.
distinguished from the capitalist system.
Exactly.
Right.
Those are two.
That's why I
different
like
can be
what that
separate.
was. I said
Yeah,
it's something
it is
different
separate.
than what we
Mindset
think.
versus-
because he can't literally by definition be
Are
a
we on?
capitalist because
Oh.
the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie class in the capitalist system that does own and control all the means of production,
Right.
he has to work for them
Right.
to do his capitalism.
Right.
So he's an aspiring capitalist,
Right.
but he's not a capitalist. So that's why I know. See, you have to look at what people are saying,
Right.
not necessarily what's.
What's
Because
Right.
I wanna, if I wanna
Look in
communicate
deeper.
with him,
yeah?
I wanna know what do you mean
What do you mean?
when you say capitalism?
Right.
Because I might automatically assume that I'm opposed to you because you have on a shirt called capitalist.
Yeah.
Without understanding what it is you mean by that.
Exactly.
And then that you wearing that shirt gives us a chance to have a dialogue about, well, there's a capitalist class, there's a capitalist system, there's a history of capitalism that's based on slavery, and it actually existed before there was a country. We just went to Dayton Leadership Academy last week for Black History Month, because we're in Black History Month. Let's
Shout out
go
to Black
mode.
History Month for sure.
So, it's an opportunity to let the younger people, that this was 7th and 8th grade, let them know that you haven't been taught everything that you need to know. You haven't been taught everything. You have been actually misled.
Yes.
Malcolm X said bamboozled. Was that Malcolm? It tricked their book.
Bamboozled.
Right. But I had to let them know, listen, in that time period, in the beginning of slavery, 1619 Project, okay, America was not America, okay? Slavery was not slavery. White people were not white people.
Agreed.
Black people were not black people. So they were looking at me like, what? But what happens is significant things in the teaching of their history are left out. Okay, 1600, America was not America, it was a colony of England. They were trying to set up a location to do their business, which was emerging slavery.
Right.
Because at that time, they didn't even have the term slavery. They had servitude and indentured servants.
Yes.
Africans came here as indentured servants. So then you had white people coming here as indentured servants. But they weren't white people and they weren't black people. So what were they? They didn't decide that until 1664. 1619, when they brought the first 20 Africans to be enslaved here, they actually had to make a law by 1664 that said, now we're going to have black people and white people. Now we're going to have the Africans are now going to be blacks and Negroes, and they are eligible to be enslaved durante vita to perpetuity forever. All they have to do is exist in Jamestown or in Maryland and be African. Okay, but they didn't want to call them African in the law. When they wrote it up, it was black and Negro.
Because there was no connection to where they came from.
Yes, then they designated the Irish in particular, but Europeans in general, as white. So this is why we understand race to be a social construct. It was created. And
I say that all the time.
well, it's true because I'll say that the laws that they created document that it's true.
Right.
in 1664. Anybody can look it up because I don't like people to just take what I say.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's pretty well what Sister was saying, Queen saying, is documented. Is based on what happened after what's called Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion. Nathaniel Bacon was a wealthy person. I liken him to Donald Trump. He was a wealthy person that wants to be in the higher oligarch. He was an oligarch, but he wanted to be in the higher one. Donald Trump back in 1992 or 3 made it was a front page. I can't remember the magazine, Fortune or Forbes, one of those. It may have been World. And on the front page had Donald Trump said, "I no longer want to be a mere billionaire." A lot of people took that as I want to make more than a mere few billions. No, he understood there's a hierarchy. That's what Nathaniel Bacon wanted, because one of the things he wanted was to expand slavery, enslave or kill Native people who are improperly called Native Americans
Right.
during that time
The
period.
Doctrine of Discoveries.
Right. He wanted to do that. He wanted to expand more, because what had happened, the oligarchs said, "Look, we've irritated these people enough. We've got and we're cool where we are." He wanted it to expand so he could get bigger. Well, he created a rebellion and asked slaves of those oligarchs to join into the rebellion, because he was saying to the slaves too, "We'll expand and you too can have more wealth. Join my rebellion." Well, the rebellion was a combination, and I call them slaves, but yeah, they use different terms. But enslaved, regardless, they were both what would be called white and black, okay? They didn't call it back then, but it was just whoever was enslaved who worked for an oligarch in his way, please join. Well, he died in the middle of that rebellion. He just died of something, dysentery or whatever it is. He died of some kind of illness.
Right.
And so it morphed. And it, in fact, included Native who we call Native Americans, blacks and whites, all rebelling against the oligarch. And it was labeled as Bacon's Rebellion. Okay, that was about 1664. When that was finally put down, it took what's up, Brother Shaq? When it was finally put down, and the British sent their military to put down the rebellion. Okay, and they sent their military to put down the rebellion. Well, after that, that's when it became a thing of evil genius. Evil genius came up. It was like, how can we still keep a slaveocracy and make it work? One, we cannot enslave all these Africans coming from another continent, don't know where the hell they are. Okay, so, and they stand out. We're easily identified. So then they gave minor privileges to and called them white. It's also in books like this, how the Irish became white, the invention of white race. There's a bunch of them that document where the term white was not used before. You were what race was before this time. And that's where I was thrown off, because I always said Europe was against Africa because of race. No, that was nationality. There were just too many Africans and who we would call Europeans that were integrated in both societies all over, because they identified by who you affiliated your culture with.
Because there were whites in Africa.
There were whites in that, who we would call white. There's Africans that are white.
Right, exactly.
We call white. They're you go to Europe, close to Africa, you got, one of the things you were known, Spaniards were called dark and handsome, tall, dark, and because we were integrated in that point. It was nationality. But what was going on at that point, it was evil genius said, we will then make Africans or blacks, or call them Negroes, like Sister said, and they are permanently to be considered lower class or enslaved, because there were Africans that owned slaves who bought their way out, because before Britain had rules about slavery. This came up too. Britain had rules about slavery that you could only enslave, I think the period at different times was like 7 years, and then you had to let them go unless they committed crimes or something like that. And that was normal, including Africans. The few they had, they were begging for more Africans, but they couldn't get them. The Caribbean was eating us up. You know, that's a whole different thing. But what was happening?
Excuse me, the Caribbean was eating.
Like, I'm talking about slaveocracy, and the Caribbean was taking the bulk of African slaves.
Okay.
Yeah, they're taking. Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry, my slang, but the bulk they were getting, and so there were a lot of them in North America saying, "Please give us some slaves," and they would get the leftovers. That's why it was never many at first. Okay, but anyway, that rebellion after rebellion, they brainstormed. How do we do this? Well, you're gonna have to let some of them Irish who we've hated for years to be part of the system. So we'll allow them to carry guns. As long as they help be slave patrol and kill off Native Americans, and they could get a few little rights to make them feel okay, but basically they were nothing more than overseers or the new house nigga. You know, that's all it was. And you trace that history, and you find out that was evil genius. That was just evil genius. We can identify who are quote Indians. We could identify quote who are blacks, and we could identify who are white. And we give certain ones that whole what was it called? Minister Farrakhan used to talk about the division of slaves. Lynch.
Okay.
Willie
Lynch.
Willie Lynch.
Right.
They Willie Lynch before we were Willie Lynch. They just basically said y'all get to do this, and that was what Sister said. After that, that was the evil genius.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
I'm glad you brought that up because you brought up something that frequently gets left out, and that's our resistance. Okay?
Oh, I hadn't got to that.
Well, the fact that you talked about the rebellion and the fact that,
Right.
you know, because many times I run into young people who wear shirts like, I am not my ancestors, I will kill you.
Yeah, I know.
And, you know, other things
Yeah,
that indicate that they're not up
They
on
don't
the
know.
fact that we were resisting from day one.
All the time. In fact, humanity resisted slavery because that's what happened in England. They own their own. The Irish, they're still at war.
When you say resisting, let me
Fighting
ask you a
back.
question.
Please.
Because I from, and I don't know if this is just the media standpoint. We debate about this all the time as far as what happened in slavery, but to me, I wouldn't say there was resistance as need to be, because if you look just at the makeup of slavery, as far as like, okay, you have a master and he probably has a few henchmen on.
We have a slaver, not a master.
Well, whatever you want to call him.
Those words have power.
Well, just let me. I don't get into titles. Just the boss. I'm just calling him the boss. The bosses. I don't get into. I'm just. The slave, the master, whatever you want to call him.
The slaver.
The slaver. Okay, I'll call him the slaver. The slave guy. Okay. You had a slave guy, the slaver, and then he had some employees, some under him, maybe three or four guys, maybe, and then you had the actual slaves on the premises, which was probably about, I would say, 25 to 50 people. I would say that much to run the crops and what they were doing. It's about 25 people minimum. Would you agree with that? There wasn't just 5 slaves
on the plantation.
on the plantation, right? About 25.
Now,
I just want to get some common ground.
Understand that even though you may have had more slaves on the plantation, they were
Right.
not the majority in the area.
No. I'm just saying. We're talking about.
Also,
Let's stick on the.
I need to ask you, what's your source?
Hold on. Wait a minute. That's why. Well, I don't have it.
No, because I wasn't attacking you.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Let him finish.
I haven't said anything yet. I wanted to say.
I think the point is
Let
that
me-
the slaves
hold on.
outnumbered the people.
Wait a minute.
that they were
That's why I'm trying to
being
get
enslaved
you
by.
guys, because you
I
guys
know where you're going.
historics are way better than mine. So I'm trying to get a common ground. So that's why I'm asking you, can we agree to 25 slaves at least on one plantation?
I'll agree to that.
Okay,
because I
okay,
want
okay.
you to get your point.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
25 people. So my point, like El was saying, is we were always outnumbered these slavers. I think we all can agree to that, because it wouldn't make sense to have slaves if they couldn't manage us. Just like any job, there's a supervisor and people looking over amongst more people, right? Okay, so we all can agree on that common ground. So the resistance I'm talking about is humanity resistance. If in my opinion, if somebody is raping our women, or having kids by our women, and decimating our children like this, there is no type of the resistance was not there as far as that, because you are choosing a lifestyle of, like Kanye said, slavery was a choice. You're choosing this lifestyle to live under instead of a more spiritual lifestyle of, this is not what the Most High wanted for me. This is not, I'm not going to stay in bondage, and I'm going to have faith in whatever happens, but I'm going to save my family right now. So that resistance part, I just don't.
Can I hear what this brother was?
And I know that you question that.
Right.
So I want to make sure that you did understand what I was saying by resistance.
Okay.
That we had resistance in many different
Forms. I
that's
got you.
not talked about. We had the resistance of poisoning the household. We had the resistance of burning the house down.
Right.
We had the resistance of killing people in their sleep.
Right.
We had the resistance of people running away
Right.
and forming maroon villages. And they would, as a matter of fact, they had to change the laws. I was reading that before I came here, the slave laws. They had to change the laws because so many Africans were running up into the indigenous people's land, combining with them, and they kept raiding the people.
Seminole.
They kept, well, not just the Seminoles.
I know, no, I'm
First
bringing
it
up
was
one.
the Shawnee. Yeah, the
Shawnee.
Seminoles was another situation.
Yeah,
See, I like to keep my history straight because certain
Make us
things
so
happen in certain places at a certain time.
Is there a moderator for this? 'Cause I don't have
Yeah,
any
yeah.
word in.
Yeah, he
You
hadn't
know,
had it. Yeah.
Who's the moderator?
I had peanut in.
Okay, all right. Can I say something? I
Absolutely.
just want to. I don't like just jumping in.
Absolutely.
And first of all, the brother's premise is he wanted us all to agree that this was reasonable. It's not. And that's not the way the slave system was set up. You have white people that come over here. First, they have these private companies under the auspices of a king that have armed men, guards and stuff, and army people assigned.
Yes.
And just like today, you could say, okay, there are more black people in Dayton than white people. Why don't we just take over the city? Well, there's a National Guard, there's the Army, but it was the same in those days. They had armed people, not just a few guys out in front of somebody's house.
Right.
Or, if you had a place and you had a few henchmen, those henchmen are related to a government. When they brought us to Virginia, there was a government. They appointed a governor of Virginia who had an armed militia in which he was fighting the Indians with, he was keeping us enslaved with, and they were armed with weapons that we didn't have. Guns were a technological marvel in those days. You could shoot somebody at a distance, even if you had to shoot one shot at a time. That was a powerful weapon. Guns, cannon, the logistics, horses and stuff. If you don't have those things, you're at a disadvantage of trying to. Yeah, we resist as much as we could.
Yeah.
And
So you're saying, basically what you're saying is,
yeah.
Don't forget about Haiti now.
no.
Because Haiti was set up before these southern plantations.
Just let me stay on point with you. So
But they fought.
so what you're saying is, you're saying this house had all these armed guards. That's what you're saying to
I'm
me.
saying they were part of a community.
I agree with that.
bigger
No.
community that was armed, a government, actually.
I'm simply talking
just an
about.
isolated house.
I'm talking about the isolated house and humanity that's going on right there in front of your face. I'm not talking about the government. That, of course, the government can do this now. They can lock this whole neighborhood down, get all the armed guards. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about my neighborhood now, right now. If somebody is coming to rape my child right at this minute, I'm going to die for my kids right there. I don't care what the law is of the government coming in to kill me later. I'm going to protect mine right then and there. That's the resistance I'm talking about.
And they
That's a good
did.
point.
And see, I think
had
what
it
we have to
Dayton.
just, I think what we just have to understand is there was a government that was
Right.
in place, and there was a code of conduct among white people.
Right.
So when we say even a slave trying to escape, we're not just talking about overseers going after him. The children
Right.
would point out where
Their
this-
own people.
The surrounding
there was no
community,
white
everything.
person in the community that wasn't there to maintain the system of slavery.
Right.
And any type of rebellion, let's take modern day times, right?
Right.
When we look at the Palestinians and their intifada or their aggression against the Israelis,
Right.
look at the amount of force that they come back on the Palestinians with. This is what he is talking about with the weapons that was in that time. So the spirit of the black man and black woman is to be free. That is the nature of every human being, right? There's three qualities of life, right? Freedom, justice, and equality.
Right.
And whenever you're deprived or robbed of any of those qualities, then you will give your life, right? You will give your life to be free.
Right.
You will give your life to get justice, and you will give your life if you're treated unfairly, right? So that's in your nature. So that is what we did. But then look at what he did then, right? So now you're coming into, as my brother was talking about, the Willie Lynch. But you even have to go even further back than that, because they say we were brought here in 1555,
Right.
but there's 64 years of hidden history that he's not telling us about. And that's when he brought us to the islands, and he would kill off the parents, and he would raise the children and put fear in the children, right? That's why today we don't know our name, we don't know our language, we don't know our history. And in that vacuum of that lack of knowledge, he put the word nigga or negro, negro, no grow, right? And so that's where we're at.
And you made
Well, okay,
this
wait a
one
minute
thing,
now.
just one thing, just to piggyback on you. You made some good points, and I agree with everything 100% that you said, especially your analogy with the Palestinians. But the difference is those Palestinians, they all come together and they all die together. And I don't think that resistance with the slaves was all the way there like the Palestinians. That was an excellent point. And it just brings on more sunshine to what I'm trying to say is because even with that brute force bombs and stuff they'll come and bomb you with, that wasn't the case back then. They still had guns and stuff like that. But if you had the upper force brute hand strength, the hand strength of one black man that can probably take on 3 of those white guys, and their guns wasn't as revolutionized as these guns these Palestinians are being shot down with these bombs. But those Palestinians, they will go out there to the end until every one of them is dead.
Let me just say
That's
one
that's
thing.
what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
All right. Yeah.
I
I'll say
recognize your concern, as a man, seeing the importance of protecting your people and protecting your children,
Right.
protecting the women. I really get that, but they have so smothered all of the information about those brothers that did that daily and nightly for their self-determination.
Oh yeah,
Right.
it was
No,
definitely
no,
people doing it.
Please.
I agree with
So
that.
that's why
I'm
I
not
said-
saying they wasn't. I'm saying collectively,
I'm not
as a
trying
group,
to-
everybody.
and I'm trying to say that, okay? Before we were enslaved here, because I don't call us slaves. I feel like Malcolm, just because kittens born in the oven, that don't make them biscuits.
Right.
Okay? We
Right.
were Africans when they grabbed us, and we're Africans here. They enslaved us as Africans. They didn't make us slaves. We're not slaves. We've never been slaves. We've been treated as
Right.
slaves.
Right.
And they're not masters. They are slavers.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that here being enslaved was after Haiti. Okay. because here is the 1619 project, but Haiti was the 1492 project. In 1492, Columbus what?
Sailed
The ocean blue. Thank you. What he did was he and his son Diego, who I call Diablo, started the slave trade. And he started slaughtering the people who were in Haiti.
Right.
And then he started bringing in the Africans and forming those plantations. Now, those original African people that went, now this is, before here.
Yeah.
Okay, so those plantations are established and making millions of dollars for Europe. They rebelled. And when you study the history of the slave laws and the slave codes and all of the restrictions, they kept piling on the restrictions and restricting who you could be around, what white people you could be around, what black people you could be around, how far you could get from the plantation itself. All of those kinds of things, it became just like that.
Give me a percentage.
Okay.
Of all the slaves, how many rebelled? Truthfully,
Okay. Let me
stood up. Give me a percentage.
I'm gonna. Look, I want to be.
Somebody give
I
me a
don't want to be
percentage.
sloppy
Well,
with
I
it.
got
I
one.
want to be precise.
It don't have to be.
Okay,
Just
because
put it out
we
there.
started with 20. They called 20 odd in
Mm-hmm.
Jamestown. Okay, that was in 1619.
Right.
But by 1860, there was 4 million Africans. So now. That gives you an idea of how fast this thing was rolling out. This was a very strong, horrific act of terror. And they formed armies, just like Baba Kwaku said, they formed armies so that all those plantations were networked to those armies.
Right.
So if there was any issue, the army would be there like that. Like you said, you can jump up in Dayton and do this and that and the other, but tomorrow they'll be dropping bombs on you like they did on the MOVE organization. They'll be dropping bombs on you like they did on the people in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They'll be wiping you out.
All right, cool. Thank you, guys. What I wanted to say was I'm also going to piggyback on what the Queen is saying, okay? When she said, like, they hid a lot of the history.
Agreed.
But I don't trust any of the story that's been told. Like, absolutely zero. He wants to know why we didn't rebel, why didn't we rebel? But my point is, it was never as treacherous as being portrayed in the media. It was never as horrifying. Like we are going like on the captor's word for it. We're taking their history. We're saying, oh man, we was rebelling here, and here. But it was always written by the people who was enslaving us. So the way that they want to demean brothers and sisters is to strip away our power and make us look as weak as possible.
Yes.
We had sex with your daughter, mother, sister, and beat them to death and beat them right in front of you, and you didn't rebel. Like, all that does is make us look terrible. The whole story about all of the Africans coming from Africa. We're the slave ships. We ain't even, there's no slave ships right now for us to go and tour, look at as part of this great history. They were sending all of these Africans, like all of these Africans from Africa for all of these centuries. Do you know what type of operation they would have to uphold in order to bring that many Africans from Africa? Millions? On what vessels? These cargo ships that they're talking about that was bringing us, there's a lot of schools of thought saying those cargo ships weren't even built back then. The cargo ship came much later in history. And where are all these cargo ships? So I question every historical fact about slavery, and why I understand that we have to learn history in order for it not to repeat itself. I question who's telling the story in the history.
Well, you
Like-
should.
I exactly
You
should.
because
Exactly.
the truth is not afraid of a question.
Exactly.
And when you
It's-
said that they distort the history, I think the Civil War is a perfect example of that. Because all throughout, they taught us that the Civil War was not fought about slavery, it was fought about money. But the reality of that is we were the money, we were the commodity, and we were the force, the fighting force that won the Civil War. There was no way.
Can we get
Go ahead,
away
just
from
speak up.
y'all? Listen, we are building on slavery, but let's go now. Let's talk about now because man,
Sure, if I
like,
can finish my point.
yeah, no
That's cool.
doubt. And I we can start with you, but like, can we address what's going
And
on
this would have to do it now.
right now? Come on, let's go, bro. Where we at?
Okay, first of all, what you had said, sister said, you had said too. First, I want to answer real quick, and I'll explain later. You said what percentage? I'll say 100%, including the sellouts. Everybody was trying to find a different percentage of freedom. Okay, so that I'm gonna say 100%, and I'm not trying to back out of what you're saying, but I want to share. Don't take that people aren't doing things for what they consider the best freedom they can get
Yeah.
at the time.
That's a good one.
Agreed.
You know,
That's
but
a good
but I
one.
don't want to get too
that's,
deep.
that's
I don't want
subjective. Their type of freedom is eating,
but
hog
ours
maws
is
and
ours
chili,
is the
so that
same
might
way
be freedom for
today.
them. So
Ours
that's
is
fine
the
for
same.
them.
Ours is the same way today.
Right,
It
okay.
is.
So
Everybody's freedom
so-
is subjective.
but you're right. But don't discount the power of propaganda. That's including back then.
Right.
A lot of the history, but this book here, American Negro Slavery Votes by Herb Aptheker.
Yeah.
Do you know this daggone book was written in the early 1900s and it was banned? They never wanted us to know that we fought back. One of the biggest questions I used to ask myself as a young person, well, why would some white people up north who I live around and racist as hell would let their only sons go out and fight to the death to free black folks? Then we hear this, oh, it had, like sisters say, oh, it had, they tell us, oh, it had to do with state right. No, let me tell you what it has to do. And that's one of the things that I keep looking into the history to find. It did have to do with the fact that there were a bunch of rebellions, including poisonings, escapes, whites, blacks escaping from the South to go north.
They were
I mean, where do
terrified.
you know you're suddenly on a place that, quote, white folks are cool? So they're killing to get free, and that's a threat to the North. Okay. The other part of it, slave people, the ordinary whites knew you can get money for catching an escaped slave. It was all kinds of crazy madness, but Haiti, I like to call with the name Haiti was but it wasn't just Haiti, it was also Barbados, it was all Haiti was the main one that caused the problem, because what was happening with the Civil War was Haiti was the place where there was more Africans than slaves, and I mean
Right.
all over the island.
Right.
They took it over, they whooped the British, they whooped the French, they whooped the Spanish, all trying to come back. That was a threat across the world. That's why Britain, Spain, and England, all of them backed away from slavery. It was a lost profit. It was too dangerous. In America, the South wanted to reopen the slave trade. In the North, they said that will turn this nation. I always fantasize what would have happened if the Confederacy won. First thing they were doing was opening the African slave trade. More Africans coming here. More Africans come here, we would have whooped their ass and took this damn country. The North knew it. They were willing to fight and send their sons to the death to stop that. It wasn't because there were some benevolent whites. I'm not going to put those down. But the majority of the rebellion fighting against the South, trying to do that, y'all ain't turning this into a Haiti.
Right.
That was exactly what that.
More chest than check.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they never
That is
trust.
profound.
And they never trusted any black. You better believe that in the South. Even that Good House Negro. I love the movie Django. It's a good fantasy movie, but I love it for that. Even the house nigger was going to be feared because he wants some level of freedom. So that it was always that threat. That's what's going on. And they hide that we rebel, just like they do today, just like they did with the Black Panther Party, just like they do, like Sister said, in Philadelphia, just like they do left and right. We rebel. And that's what it is. It's a problem there. So I'm just hoping, because I love you, because I was listening to the video my first time, and I said, your passion is real, and that question is real. There was a choice on how we fought.
Right.
That's what the choice was. There was a choice on how and what we could do at the.
Necessary.
Okay, if I do this, then Massa might kill my son, so I have to decide how much I can do. That's what was going, but it was always, how far can I get to freedom? 100%. Unless somebody lost completely their mind. That's in any race, group of people. But that's what I want to say to your question. 100%. It was, what level of freedom can I get safely?
I'll let you rebuttal.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take on so long.
No, you great.
Well, it's just it's like this is why I don't read any books. I don't read at all. I don't read any books. I get all my knowledge from upstairs. I don't read any books because, like he said, stuff has been indoctrinated, lied to. So I go off observations. And
that's good.
And what I see,
putting it down.
What I see, how I make my hypothesis or conclusion on is, I make that on observations of what I'm seeing now.
And that's empirical
Seeing
evidence.
now, and I can see why so many were enslaved because they're enslaved today.
Right.
They're enslaved today. So I can see why people let themselves become enslaved, even though you're saying 100% resistance, and we'll agree that certain people's freedoms are subjective.
Okay.
My freedom in this way might not be the same as
Right.
freedom as I see it.
Right.
So I give you that. But I'm thinking people that lived a humane life before they were born into slavery. Now, being born into slavery is different from being,
Which is what we are.
being that's different. But the people that were not born into slavery and lived these humane lives before that, I just kind of question the resistance with those people.
Can I real quick, just real quick about the books? I won't take long. I apologize to everyone. The thing on it is, I almost always look for the books that are close to being banned or not seen, and I compare them to the books. I mean, I got Adolf Hitler's book.
Right,
I got Mein Kampf.
There you
I
go.
read that too. I read it.
I get all of it, and you have to take all of that information and come up with your own based on
conclusion,
your
yeah.
empirical expression. So I suggest you not completely avoid. That's why I bring stuff too, because
Right.
It's not that I'm saying I agree that in each book there's going to be fallacy, but you're trying to build a case on understanding what the hell's going on.
Right.
So add that to your list, not just I don't listen to anything or I don't read anything. Consider it. I'm not ordering, of course.
No.
I'm saying consider adding some of those revolutionary books that sister would suggest, brother would suggest, Shaq, even some ones you just brainstorm.
Right.
The first thing
For
they
sure.
do for slavery is take away your freedom to research and understand. The first thing they do is censorship. Anytime somebody censors, I immediately go on alert.
No,
Right.
for sure.
Well, it's not like we can't
sorry.
understand why, because we were the largest
I think it was
financial
my parents'
asset
sister. I
of
think
the
sister.
whole economy. I
Yeah.
said it.
Go ahead, bro.
No, I respectfully, I just wanted to bring in another element, and of course I agree with everything that they're saying. So my why? That's why I want to understand why. Why, as you're saying, why is it that we were under this type of brutal system for almost over 3 centuries, right? Going on 4 centuries. Not just here in America, but in Africa, they talk about Hitler and what he did to the Jews.
Right.
They never talk about King Leopold and what he
Right,
did
in the Congo.
in the Congo.
Hitler.
Right.
15 million
Or Coney.
or more,
Yeah.
right? So the question is, so now we have this system, right? This global system of white supremacy. So now we're not even talking about just the subjugation and enslavement of black people. Now we're talking about the subjugation and the war with all the darker peoples of the world. Now we're not only talking about the subjugation of all the darker peoples of the world, now we're talking about the subjugation and the war with nature. I mean, when we talk about white supremacy, we are talking about an alien that's on our planet who is at war with everything that's natural. The question,
Resources.
with just everything that's natural. So now, coming from the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have to ask, why was he allowed to rule over the black man? And it's written in the scripture for 400 years, right? Said, know of a surety, Abraham, that your seed would go into a strange land among strange people, and they would be inflicted for 400 years. We are in a strange land because the animals that you see here are not the animals that you would see over in Africa. And we are among strange people because we all know that the white man can see something totally different than the way that we see things. He sees things more on a very material, carnal level, without the spirituality in it, right? He likes to break things up into fractions, right? The conquer and divide theory. He doesn't see things as holistic. That's why when you go to the doctor, he doesn't treat you holistically. He treats you fractionally by giving you a pharmaceutical drug that causes more harm than it does good, right?
Right.
So what we're taught basically is that we were brought into bondage, and this is a purification. We're going through what is called a purification process.
How long are you going to go through that?
Yeah, it's given a time.
I agree.
Yeah.
There should have been a purification process, but how long are you going to go through that process?
Right. So we were given 400 years. 400 years that we would be in bondage under this system of white supremacy that came into existence 6,000
Do you
years
believe
ago.
you're personally under bondage?
We all are.
No, I'm asking you personally. Do you believe that?
Once you get the knowledge of self, you free yourself from that bondage. However, you are still, the system,
There you go.
the system is still
So
alive.
are you free?
And it's being you can be free. Yeah, you can absolutely
I got
be
an
free
example.
in that system.
It's like being
Yeah.
outside of your prison cell, but still being confined to a prison.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you can be free even if you're in your prison cell.
Yeah.
But
You can be
that's when
free.
you're talking about the very esoteric, metaphysical reality. But when we talk about our lives, trying to negotiate our lives under a system of white supremacy, then we got to be concerned about the everyday realities of how our children are being educated, how our children are being shot down in the streets,
Right.
okay, how our health care is not providing us with good health. Okay. How all of these things and all of the institutions that affect our lives,
Yes.
how they are being operated. And it's our responsibility to address that.
Yeah. And let me
We
say,
can't just say, no matter what's going on, I'm going to be free. Namaste.
right.
No.
So let me veggie back on that. There is no such thing as an individual. So
Right.
the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that no black man can rise above the condition of their people. So we see some of our people who are very rich, they got a lot of influence, but there's still that system of white supremacy. So you had Michael Jackson,
Still nigga.
you had Muhammad Ali, who said, no, it was, who was that said that?
Jay-Z.
Muhammad Ali.
Jay-Z said it, but Muhammad always
I
said
know Muhammad Ali said that.
Yeah.
Even Martin Luther King he came into the recognition that he feared that he was integrating his people into a burning house, right? So the house that he's talking about is that system of white supremacy. When we talk about capitalism, we're talking capitalism without safeguards. It's slavery, right? So capitalism is a system where it's a system of power, right? It's a system where I'm not saying dog eat dog, but there's another saying for it. But whoever's the strongest in a capitalistic society, that is how capitalism is run. It's not a system that gives back to humanity. It's only a system that takes from humanity. Not only does it take from humanity, but capitalism also takes from the earth. It goes in and it rapes the earth of the mineral resources and it never puts back. So now you have now think about this. We have an uprising now of people all over the world. Everybody's dissatisfied. You know what else is dissatisfied? The planet is dissatisfied. We just had an earthquake in Turkey, 7.8.
Yeah, 15,000 people
Two
died.
earthquakes.
2 earthquakes, right,
One
back
in
to back.
Syria and one in Turkey.
Because now that comes to your the answer to your question. How long will it last? It's at the end right now. And we have, as Black people, we have to decide whether we're going to submit ourselves to do the right thing, we can say to God, or whether we're going to submit ourselves to keep following this man's way of life. And he is programming our people to be self-destructive. Right now on YouTube, I'm watching videos where he's showing people running up to people's car and blowing them away. He's promoting this.
Promoting it, right?
Yeah.
Because he's trying to program our people
course.
to take us to hell with him, because he know his time is over.
I had this, you guys. Y'all can take a look at that right there on the screen behind you.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you
Let
go.
my man say something.
No, I was saying what I wanted to say was that you can't investigate our history and culture just in your head. You can't do it. I tried it when I was a kid and it didn't work. I mean, you have to go outside. You have to talk to people. I had to talk to my father, my family.
Of course, I
You
agree.
got to go to the library and read.
Yeah.
And a distrust of the written word, I don't understand that. I mean, there's some lies out here, but you know, here's a book he's got by Gerald Horne, the Counter Revolution of 1776. It tells by Gerald Horne, who's a Black professor
Is
at the University of Houston.
he's still alive.
He's still alive. You can talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's written about, he's gone back, he's called out the relevant documents, the letters that the American colonists wrote to the British and back and forth and to each other,
Right.
and about why the revolution was fought in the first place.
Yeah.
He's
Really
written about
fought to keep-
40 books.
That's the best type of
Yeah.
research right there that I can
But
observe.
But you
this
know why I like
person
his book
talking
covers.
about it.
All of them show us fighting back.
Yeah,
I
there
base
we are.
my premise of research like that, where I can, because in my views, if I didn't observe it, I don't know if it's true or not.
But
And
the
even
point
then
I'm
I
making
can- and I can-
or
about the
I can talk to
percentage you asked
somebody.
about is that if your
right.
premise is wrong, everything else would be
You
wrong.
build
And your
on it.
premise was, why didn't we rebel? We did.
I didn't say why didn't we. I know plenty
Well,
of
he
people
said-
rebelled.
Well,
No,
well,
I
well,
didn't say why we didn't.
Why
I
we
said
didn't have more?
of course,
Or-
because I think it was a
We
like he
had a
used
lot.
he used the Pakistanis as an example,
Yeah.
and I know those Pakistanis
Palestinians.
Palestinians
Yeah.
they go all the way out, and they're not afraid to get killed. They're
That's
not afraid
what
to
we
get
see.
bombed.
Well,
There are those that
No,
are.
I can see that
There's a
because I've
reason for
seen
that.
I
Well,
observed that.
Palestine isn't at constant war, so you do have people who are there
Acquiesce.
taking what's
you
given
have
to
to
them.
have
No.
you have to have a relationship in your group, an identity, and that's something that the people in Palestine have. The Palestinians they know who they are. At least historically, they have a mythos around themselves. They know who they are, who their brother is. I mean, Greg Carr always says on his talk show that the most important relationship is our relationship to one another.
Yeah.
That's right.
And when we build, that's why we've been talking for years about building unity in the Black community. That's what made
Right.
Martin Delaney
That's
great.
my whole
That's
point.
what made Marcus Garvey great, because he pushed that
Yes.
point. That's
So
what
we
made
would all agree
Malcolm
that we
X,
have a
Elijah
lack of
Muhammad.
unity.
We talked about
Yeah.
us
But
coming
so-
together,
but so
looking
does
at each other.
Africa.
Yeah.
Don't
Just like
let it
any
happen.
That's all I
other
was saying.
continent.
We have a
And
lack
the
of
thing,
unity.
Just like
the
any
thing
other
we have to understand is when we were brought into slavery, robbing us of that knowledge of self, he destroyed a lot of our minds. So a lot of our rebellions were destroyed from the inside.
So whatever
Now, look,
you think
when
of
you-
yourself
Right.
religiously or whatever, the thing is that we owe each other.
Right.
And to the
I
extent
agree
that we
100%.
recognize that, we're able to act.
Yeah.
We're not able to act if we see ourselves as separate pieces being victimized. And a lot of times in slavery, they push that situation that we were separate people being victimized. I'll
That's
whip
what he
you to
did.
your bloody,
Separate,
and then
conquer, and
if you
divide.
do something, I'll rape your wife. I do so. They all kind of threats. But to the extent that we
Lynching.
realized that we were all in the same pot, we were able to do something. Delaney said at the Brick Church at St. Helena Island in South Carolina in 1865, Martin Delaney was on this hat. He's buried in Xenia right now. But he went to Africa in 1859, signed a treaty with the Alake chiefs in Abeokuta for us to settle there. He tried everything he could to get us free. But as a major in the U.S. Army, appointed by Lincoln of all people, he stood in front of the Brick Church and told the freedmen, the first thing I want you to understand is you freed yourselves.
That's
He
right.
said, do you understand that? And someone said, he said, do you understand that? You freed yourselves.
You better
Without your participation in this war, without you poisoning the master, running away from the master, setting a place on fire, this
lynching the man.
civil war would never have come to a conclusion. You freed yourself.
Okay, so I want to pose a question since like we are in Black History Month, you know what I'm saying? So also I want to talk about this new Nike ad that's going on right here, which kind of goes inside with what our brother Chen was talking about, how things can be depicted differently in media and how the media will look at us in regards to how we're depicted. And how does this affect us during Black History Month? Because to me, this is anti-Semitic, and the way I look at it, it should be this big of an outrage as they were over Kyrie Irving resharing something, or something as Kanye West just sharing a book or something of that nature. This right here is a demasculation of a black man
Absolutely.
Let me tell you what
during Black History Month.
I need to
I need
say
to talk
something
on
on
that.
mine, and it may be controversial. First of all, I don't care what sexual thing you do on your own time. This has to do with a bigger agenda of the highest of anti-humans, which is not necessarily to make people into this, but to lower birth rate. The mythology that there's too many people on the planet is what, and once again, that goes back to Haiti. It goes back too many people that are not that are in your slave camp can cause rebellion. They're out and they've been very successful with lowering the Earth's population. And it ain't just us, black folks or people of color. It's in Israel, where you would think all the privileged whites are. They got them shooting up that toxin called vaccines and killing, and they're dying. That's part of lowering the population. That is what this is. It is to lower the population. I have nothing to do with what people want to do sexually. You know, in fact, I'll look at this. If a guy has or a lady has 6, 7 children, then suddenly they decided they've added to the world's population. They can do what the hell they want as long as they did the right thing
Right.
to add procreate. I push on my daughters and sons, make children. That is the most revolutionary act you can do.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
So I just wanted to share mine on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Because this is Black History Month, I just feel it's so important for me to bring up something that we may feel is off the point. But our civilization, the highest civilization created by African people, started 6,000 years BCE, the Nile Valley civilization. So when we're talking about slavery, you know, with so much energy, we're giving slavery so much energy, we're giving death so much energy. You know, we have to give some energy to the reality of our history. The history that's taught to us is truncated. That means it's cut off. And we have a truncated racial memory as a result of that. Okay. We have a situation in which every time we sit down to talk about our history, we wind up talking about slavery. Come on. If our high civilization, and I'm talking about, when you say high civilization, what do you mean? A civilization that was able to maintain a level of peace, that was able to facilitate art, architecture, mathematics, surgery, medicine, moral codes, writing, education systems, aqueducts, sewers, toilets, dams, as the first iteration of these things on the planet Earth. Okay? But we spend all this time talking about slavery, and I'm not saying we should forget it, because we can't forget it. We can't repeat it. Okay? But what I'm saying is that 6,000 years of high culture
Yeah.
compared to 400 years
exactly.
of enslavement.
Exactly.
He said that all the time.
Exactly.
Which one defines us?
And look at the Moors in Spain.
Which one defines
I mean,
us?
bro, we were
Now,
like,
and there's another deeper issue in there that addresses what you were saying, brother. Because I understand what you're trying to say, and I really.
What you just said?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Why are we still talking about this when we should be talking about this?
But even
Like El
more.
said, let's talk about what I mean, you talking about we spend, not you guys,
Mm-hmm.
people spend all these minutes talking about what's holding us back. You
Their
can't
own
even
lives.
clean your own neighborhood up.
Right. Well, also understand that spiritual part
Right.
because that 6,000 year civilization headed up by African people. I'm not talking about even no light skinned African people. I'm talking about that civilization held up by black African people for 6,000 years is what defines us as a peaceful people. Now, with civilization, if you're going all over here warring and going over there warring and going over there, that European history is nothing but one war to the next war.
Right.
And us being dragged in it, thinking
Damn.
we're going to get something out of it. So what I'm saying
Come to
is
me.
that because they maintained peace and they had this moral code called Ma'at, that's right, they were able to build.
Yeah.
Those pyramids can be seen from outer space. All the other civilizations that have come after that, their buildings are gone. Our buildings are still there. Our writing is still there. Our deep thought philosophy is still there because they carved it in stone and they created a language to do that. So our children need to understand, no, you're not a slave. You didn't come from slaves. You came from Africans, and this is what those Africans did. Now, the other day at the academy, I was telling them, look, I'm not going to spend a long time here talking to y'all about slavery.
Right.
Because you heard a lot about it already, and you seen the movie.
It's a new movie
Okay.
every single year.
Thank you. So what happens is we as a people wind up being that people. They walking in the movie and the movie is half over trying to understand what's going on. And we're confused about everything because we didn't start at the beginning. We need to start at the beginning, looking at our history and bring that forward. And our ancestors left us such great history, such great symbols that can empower us, symbols that can lift us up. The importance of symbology, which was started in Africa, is lost on us, except
Libation
when
is
we
one.
see some golden arches. Or we see a target with the bullseye in the middle of it. Okay? Those symbols are meant not to lift us up, it's meant to lift money out of our pockets.
Right.
But the symbols that our ancestors made, Janame, the Ankh, yes, those are the ones that are code. Those are our code, and it's very, very brilliant to be able to take a whole narrative and squeeze it down into a symbol, so that when somebody sees that symbol, it even goes past the brain. It skips the thinking about it part. It goes right into the heart. It causes that connection that we need to build. So this is, the truth in what you're saying is not lost on me. It's just that, what do we want to give energy to
Right.
as a people? It's just like a person that has cancer. They're walking around talking, oh, I'm going to die and this and that. And the next person is saying, I'm going to beat this.
Right.
Beat this.
Which one has the,
Which one is
which
it?
one is
What do
going
you
to
wanna
win?
do?
Who's going to win?
Right.
We have to win for our children.
Let me.
I'll
Okay.
Yeah.
well, I wanted to just address like the media narrative that we give the energy to, because like the media narrative is what's saying like black people don't stick together. But when you look at how we vote in our voting process, I don't think anybody sticks together like blacks. I think we all vote like one way.
Yeah.
And I think that we have a certain type of viewpoint about things all one way. But it's good for us to have diversity. But when you think about how white people act in America, like they got Democrats, Republicans, and they are always disagreeing about stuff. They don't stick together about anything. And you talk about the major wars that happened, World War I, World War II, where this was like bloodshed, like in so much that we're calling them world wars.
Right.
So like, yeah, we fight and kill each other, but they're never on the scale of a major war like that. And going back to what the Queen was saying, like in Africa, we don't have those type of historical events. We was peaceful people. So I just think that like a lot of the media narratives, including white supremacy, is like if you participate in it, then you're involved with it. But I feel that it doesn't trump the Most High.
Yes.
I don't think that the system of white supremacy can be overpowered by righteousness and doing whatever it is that you're supposed to do. And I have a difficult time, like for each one of you, I guess we can go around the round table. So if we do acknowledge that there's white supremacy, what do you say to your child or your grandchild if you have to address this issue of white supremacy? And bro, I'll come to.
Can I say something real quick? to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
image?
for sure.
Because that's serious right there.
It is serious.
Right? And so I want to come lay the foundation with this. Pharaoh saw the children of Israel multiplying. He saw them having a lot of babies. And he said, come, let us deal with them wisely
Right.
before they multiply, join on to another army. So obviously Pharaoh was at war and come against us. This is the same mindset that's in the rulers of white America. They see the black man and woman multiplying. Now he's having trouble having babies.
Agree.
We're not having trouble. We're not having trouble having babies, except through the wise, wicked chemistry that he's put in our food. He's put in our food what's called hormone inhibitors. He's put in our foods called in the materials that we touch called phthalates and bisphenol A. These type of things disrupt the hormones and cause our, for instance, our male regenerative organ to be mal-shaped, if you will, right? Smaller. Even chemicals to cause us to feel a certain way to the same sex, right? What this is his fear of the natural militant propensity that's in every black man. By nature, the black man is a warrior. This is what he fears, and this is what this image is. It's an emasculation and it's a population control, right? Because he doesn't want our children, he doesn't want us to multiply. So now he's pushing on us homosexuality. He's pushing homosexuality on us. Even though his culture, the white man's culture, is that of homosexuality. You go back to the Greeks and the Romans.
Oh yeah, and they are.
This was not nothing that the Africans were doing. But this is something now that he's pushing on the black man. Why?
It
Because
saves his white daughter also.
the first law of nature is self-preservation. And if you have two men coming together, it's just like you have a car battery and it has a negative and a positive post. With a negative post and a negative post, you can't generate energy. With a positive post and a positive post, you can't generate energy. But with a negative post, a man and a woman, that's the only way that you're going to have children. His overall goal is to control the process of life. He wants to dictate who can and who can't have children. And that's why he's pushing this type of lifestyle in America.
Okay, back to the round question.
Yeah, I think he definitely, I think the system of white supremacy definitely does try to influence people's sexuality and sexual behavior. But I also think that there are people who exist naturally on their own who just are not in that sexual typical category, okay, of heterosexual. I mean, there are people who are going to be homosexual. There and now this LBGTQ plus
XYZ.
I mean XYZ, you know, and
That's
what
that
I'm saying
slippery
is
slope.
what I'm saying is that there's gonna be a day of judgment, and I don't want to be that person at the day of judgment that has to answer for threatening or negating some young person because they're gay and then they commit suicide. I don't want that. I don't want any parts of that. I don't want any parts of oppressing people because of their sexual preferences. Mama
I don't want no
Ola
parts of that
BC
either.
is not in that. Thank you.
But I
So
will
just-
point it out that
No.
that is the plan.
Well, I started out by saying that people's natural inclinations versus the agenda is two different things in my mind.
Right.
Just like him wanting to be good in business in the capitalist system. You know, we have to try to understand each other, you know, in what we're saying. I don't want to, it's not a debate for us to kill each other at the table.
Right.
We're trying to understand how I think about things and why I think about things. Y'all don't know. Quaco and I were so excited to come here today because as elders, you know, we're in our 70s.
Right.
And we
Boy, y'all
love.
look good.
Man.
Boy,
But-
boy, y'all doing something right.
I make it.
Boy,
Well,
on my last leg
that's
down.
cultural.
let me see them notes. Let me see them notes I got over there.
that's cultural. That's cultural too. But that's another discussion we could have for another day. But I'm just saying that you all are the future. You're our real social security. You know, everything is going to be in your hands. And we're not here to lord anything over you. We're here to make sure we're connected. Make sure that we're making our best effort to understand each other, that we're really doing our best to communicate with each other so that we have love operating right here as our highest principle. That's what has got us this far. Because when I was telling those students, look, yes, all of those things that happened in slavery, yes, they happened. But you can also take that as the fact that you are undefeated. Okay? All those things happen, but you are undefeated. You are here. You are strong. You're going to keep going. And you're going to know more about your history than just slavery. You're going to know what you can accomplish and where you can go. Because when Carter G. Woodson started the Black History Month, well, he started Black History Week, right? That was his concern that he expressed. He said, if our young people don't understand their true history, they will not be prepared to deal with what they're going to have to deal with. Yeah.
I think.
No, yeah, I get
Well,
what
yeah.
we was just gonna ask how you would explain
White
white supremacy to
supremacy,
your
yeah.
child.
Go ahead.
How I would explain to my child? Well, I have already. My child is now 40 years old, and I systematically explained it to him and my daughter by sending them to a black school. I went to Chicago to become part of the Institute for Positive Education's New Concept Development Center, and I raised my children in an atmosphere where they salute the red, black, and green every morning. And they go around the room asking how everybody's doing before they start the day. They had Black history every day. They had science. They had literature and stuff. And just about all those students are doing well. Everybody, there were about 100 students a year from preschool to 6th grade. And my son went through 6th grade in New Concept, and then he went to the public school system. But by then, he was prepared. He knew who he was. He knew how to deal with
They had
it.
that armor on.
And yeah, that's right. And white supremacy is a real thing. I just want you all to know it's historic.
The system.
There's a book here I brought, Intellectual Warfare by Jacob Hudson Carruthers, who is a friend of mine in Chicago, black historian from Texas. He went to Texas Southern University, became a professor at Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago. And he, along with Dr. Conrad Worrell, Dr. Anderson Thompson, were the founders, were some of the founders, along with John Henry Clark, Dr. Beanut, and others, Asa Hilliard, of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, the National Black United Front, a lot of other organizations that came about in the 70s and 80s. But Jake went back, because he's a committed scholar, he went back to the origin, the original writings of the people who define white supremacy. He went back to David Hume, Immanuel Kant, the writers of the 18th and 19th century, who laid out what white supremacy was all about and used that terminology. They used that terminology in the during the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln is quoted, and you can find this quote anywhere, where he said, "Well, after the war, we're gonna have a problem because we have free Negroes or whatever in the United States, and I'm a white man, and there has to be a superior and an inferior, and I'm a white man. I'm in favor of white supremacy." And he said, so we had to figure out what to do with them. Maybe we send them to Central America, and he had a plan to do that before he died.
So I think my question though is asking, one, should we teach our kids that white supremacy can stop them from anything? And how do you teach your kids how to defeat or make it in spite of white supremacy?
Great.
That's
Great
different.
word.
And this to that question, yeah, I taught my children that you have enemies, and you have a society that is in a flow. Not every white person is a conscious white supremacist, but this is a system of white supremacy. Yeah. And I do, for a living, I do interviews with for the history makers. I've started in 2002, and out of 4,700 interviews I've done, half of them, we're supposed to be on 60 Minutes before the end of the month. But the people that I interview, they talk about, there are people who were some of the first black students at Harvard, and they tried to go to Harvard when there was a quota of 2 black people a year in Harvard. It didn't matter what your grades were, And there are people who had super grades, but they couldn't get in because they could only take 2 every year. And there are other schools that have similar, there are like restrictions in the military, restrictions in every walk of American life. A lot of them
we
knocked
want to
down.
go
That's
there,
the civil rights movement and everything, but there's still resistance, and you got a coalition now.
But see, I have a problem with us wanting to go to Harvard when they don't want us there. And why not educate ourselves and not use their merits of greatness? Like, set our own merit of greatness and say, you can come to us. Like we keep begging
Right.
for their stamp of approval of genius. Like, bruh, like F Harvard.
Harvard make
Well, look
plays.
at what
Exactly.
intellectual
Like we,
slaves.
that's
Look what the first
nothing
black
for us. Though.
graduates of Harvard did. Du Bois came out of Harvard and was one of the founders of the NAACP. He founded Crisis Magazine. He wrote Suppression of the African Slave Trade, Reconstruction in the South. I mean, he wrote like tons of books and organized groups of black people. William Ferris was a companion of Marcus Garvey, pushed for black unity. He wanted us to, wherever we were in the world, to organize ourselves for our own education and freedom. The early black, William Leo Hansberry, there's just been a Hansberry Society formed. He was the first, he graduated from Harvard. He got a master's degree in history. He would have got a PhD had there been one available in African history, but nobody knew more than he did at that point. And why was he at Harvard? Because he got the best, some of the highest scholarly training. Nobody could say you weren't a scholar if you went to Harvard. That was the reason. But after that, he taught at Howard for the rest of his life. And he taught black students and made a bond with students in Nigeria. And they named the library at the University of Nigeria after William Leo Hansberry.
Like, out of all these black inventors that's created all of these wonderful inventions, none of them went to Harvard. We ain't need Harvard to come and be innovative and create all of the wonderful things that we got. But the point that I'm saying is like white supremacy, and for all it's worth and all their system, I want to know how it's stopped us in any way. Brother Steve.
And then I would say that the best way to raise our children to be able to navigate through this system of white supremacy and to be successful is to teach them the knowledge of self. It's just that simple. That is the key to overcoming the rites of passage. We have to recapture our culture. And what is culture? Culture is a way that people perceive reality, right? Culture is a way that people conduct themselves in their community. Culture is how a people solve problems, right? So when you look at the way that we act in America, you can say that this is not our culture, but this is a culture that has been infused. Okay, so for instance, and this is why we go back to this. This is all psychological warfare. Yeah. See, we think of the police brutality, but a young man, he just killed himself. Why is that? Why are more and more of our young boys and girls committing suicide when in slavery we wasn't trying to commit suicide? Right. Unless we were trying to, sometimes we did.
Jump off the boat.
They would do that. But they were doing it for a different reason than today. Today we're committing suicide because we don't have any love for self.
Right.
We don't see any future for. We don't see ourselves in the future, right? Because our children don't have a knowledge of self. And the white man, the enemy, the natural enemy of the black man, he doesn't want us to have that knowledge of self, and that's why he's fighting that critical race theory. Because he doesn't want the black man to have a knowledge of self. And when you're robbed of a knowledge of self, the saying is that those who don't have a knowledge of their history are doomed to repeat it. We have the possibility of as a people to go back into slavery, but it won't be a slavery where you have shackles on. Right. It'll just be a slavery where you're just so robbed of the knowledge of self that you just.
Okay.
We get in the mix real quick. Hey.
Yeah, Shaq.
I'm gonna get in the mix. I gotta go to my school.
Yeah.
They waiting on.
Here, why don't you sit here?
Yeah.
Sit here. Sit
I got a meeting at
No,
2.
no. I gotta go. I gotta go. First of all, this is a great conversation, and you talked about what we tell young people. So
Yeah.
I'm probably literally working with about 5,000 young people in the Montgomery County.
Come up a little closer, Shaq, so I can see you
Right
better.
here?
Yep.
No, I got
Get
to
like
go.
right in that.
I'm
right in that
literally
hole. There
working
you
with
go.
5,000, not made up numbers. I got like 300 boys today. And when we talk about racism, one of the things that I tell them is power plus prejudice equal racism, adultism, sexism, heterosexism, warism. It's power. Prejudice plus prejudice is just a feeling. So if I'm prejudiced, you probably got a feeling, but I don't have no what power. So I teach young people that you have to get power. And the way that you get power is the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, which they call Kwanzaa. Let's say it includes a value system, because that's what it is, a black value system, unity all the way down. So I'm teaching them totally different. That's why they don't want to do rites of passage, because rites of passage just don't talk about history. No, what history are we making? What are we doing now? My mother used to give me a candy. I used to think she was crazy at the time. Now laters, I'm like, Mom, this is the worst candy I can do. I want a Snickers. I want a Big Mac. She said, no, Marlon, now later. If you don't understand now, it affects you later. I always remember that. So when I study different. I do get in some books, because some of these books, woo, brilliant brothers and sisters, black and white. Sometimes you got to think with the white boy. Like, I like to Harvard. I don't think all of us should go to Harvard. I think a few should, to know what they're talking about.
Right.
So I don't think us all, but yes, a few should. My sister graduated from Harvard.
I would like to go
Right?
to Harvard.
Okay. And now she's about to take a job at Howard.
Right.
She's retired from Harvard, right? But she's gonna go work at Howard because she want to get back. So we need both sides, right? We got to understand both sides. So that's why we're teaching young people. That's why you have to do rites of passage. I like Neely Fuller's book, and he's a historian, not me. Neely Fuller says it's all a business: sex, education, war, politics, entertainment. That's the shit We got to understand, and we got to teach young people. We teach about capitalism, how it's power. If you ain't got no money, you can't help nobody.
Right.
Another example, we just went to Dunbar today. The young man got killed,
R.I.P.
46 people. I challenged him, you want to do something now? Come up with the money. We raised $1,500 amongst the group. I'm just not leaving Dunbar, I gotta go to another school. That's power. We have to teach power. We can't run, because see, power is power over, power to get even. My mother used to say, Marlon, power is what you use, and the real power helps the community. So like even with this discussion, right, we got to break this all the way down in terms, see what some of the solutions that came from this, and then y'all put it back out there. Here's some of the solutions that we came with, boom, 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 because we don't need to stay in that mindset and that mentality. And you know, I don't teach that. I let the historians come in and I let them get out.
Yeah.
Because I can do something they can't do. I can motivate them to be great. I can take what I learned from them and I present it as KRS-One, my friend, edutainment, education via entertainment. So I get them the real good I love myself. Right. Now I'm teaching them how to love themselves and how to take that love outside of that community, right? Take it outside the school into the community. So that all of this stuff is a balance. We got to find balance, my eye.
Yeah.
We got to find balance with my, the truth, justice, right, reciprocity. And when we find the balance, we have to teach the balance. That's what we can do now.
Man, that's right.
That's the now. That's the now later right now. I'm doing this shit right now. I don't just come to no discussion.
Right.
I go to the schools. I'm in the middle of the stuff. Because
Yeah.
I have a responsibility because I do owe the community. I do owe the ancestors.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
I owe
Yeah.
We want to say,
my
brother,
cards because of them.
we want to say, brother
They
Shank.
gave their blood.
I say.
Shank. Hey, brother Shank. Before you go, we wanted to say we love them glasses too.
Oh yeah.
Fight.
Hey, we gave it real fast, y'all.
Love you, bro. All right, Shaq. Peace, bro.
Thanks, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you,
I
bro.
actually loved your comments about Harvard University because you make the F Harvard button. I wear it because while we have Harvard and some people are going to go there, we can't sleep on the significance of having our own schools,
Yes.
our own educational institutions, our own processes. Because you're right, we do look to Harvard for approval. We look to Harvard for recognition. And Harvard was financed by slavery. Harvard was part of the whole slaveocracy that, as a matter of fact, earlier I was saying that we were the largest financial asset in this country.
Absolutely.
More than the banks, the railroads, anything else they had
Life
going.
insurance
It was
funds.
African people who made America wealthy and made it the wealthiest country in the world. Harvard was involved in the part of that process. So we do need to have something that is our own, something that affirms us, something that will really allow our children to understand that they come from greatness, not slavery.
Howard.
And if we get a knowledge of self, then there's nothing wrong with going to Harvard.
Right.
Because when you go into there, you're going into there with the knowledge of and the purpose of what you're going to use that knowledge for. So, but when we go into Harvard, many of us, once again, because we have lost that knowledge of self, we just become cogs in the system. You know what I mean?
And my I want to go to my bro right here. My only point in saying was about Harvard is just because we were saying that they wouldn't allow us to go there, but we kept fighting to try to go there in spite not being wanted.
Right.
And so I would say like the brilliant people who were applying there, like just create our own. Like I just feel like it's our responsibility to create our own. To the elder, bro. That was my only point. But I understand exactly what you were saying. I understand what Shaq was saying, that it's good to know both sides.
Yeah.
But I think that it's okay for us to salute ourselves and trust our own brilliance and create our own
I was
brilliance.
just trying to make there are limits. White supremacy put limits on things that we could do
Sir.
in the white world. So
Yeah.
you couldn't. They didn't want us in the military for a long time, and then when they put us in, it was segregated. During World War I, they assigned the black troops to the French to supervise because they didn't want to do it. World War II, they finally, my father said they called him a nigger every day in World War II. And at least 100 other people I've interviewed were veterans that told the same story.
Yes.
Being lined up and mistreated, people being hung for talking to a white woman over in Europe back in the 1940s. But we do have opposition. That was my point. Anything we try to do in this country, you have opposition. White supremacy exists in terms of their attitude of trying to suppress us. And it's not that we should accept that, or we should, that's why I sent my children to an independent school, because I could control that level of their education,
Brother Vic.
Yeah, going back to one saying, know thyself, as simple as that sounds, it is not simple.
Right.
You have to commit to understanding what that is. That is how you learn the universe through self. But we don't know how to define self yet. I am comfortable with saying that because I continue to get more questions than answers as I look. And I'm comfortable. I tell them I'm comfortable with finding out reality, no matter where it leads me to, regardless of my predetermined thoughts. I think a lot of human history goes far beyond 6,000 years.
Absolutely.
The base of the Sphinx and the pyramids, according to watermarks, are showing over 35,000. So there's some things that are questions there, and you have to say, I'm not unafraid. So know thyself. The other saying, too, of course, it's always attributed to somebody we don't know, but the other one is do no harm. Now, that's a medical concept, but it was attributed to Herodotus.
It's one of the principles of my art, too.
Right. Do no harm is an important part. My personal teacher at a higher age, the late Bill Morrell, who Shaq would know well. That's how we came together. He brought, right. All of us know Bill. Right. I didn't mean that. Yeah. But he left, so I wanted to bring it up. Bill Morrell said, be like the chicken. And what he said is, a chicken in the yard eats shit and then eats out it, picks the corn out of it. So you can go to Harvard and you could pick out the stuff once you have the mind of self and use it. Re-eat the right nourishment and leave the other garbage on the ground. That's what a chicken does. And so I'm like, that's what I'm at right now. I also want to quickly suggest maybe during this month or something, have us come in sort of individually so you can dig into it. Because each of us have some different concepts,
viewpoints.
but notice
Absolutely.
there's a unity.
Yeah.
Because that's what I am so anti-censorship. And that's what it is when they hide history from you. That's what it is when you start finding out. And actually, I enjoy finding out new stuff.
Absolutely.
I started out very much with my parents as an integrationalist. I mean, because I was growing up in the 60s, Martin Luther King, who was a brave man, and those people that were with him, I understood that. Then I ended up a hardcore black nationalist. I mean, unyielding. I mean, Steve Coakley was my friend, kind of just gangster, hardcore. Anything that was white was the devil, period. Until even with Steve Coakley, he said, you got to read some of those white books because some of that information's there that we can use. Goes back to Bill, picking it out. And then from that, I became African-centered. And then from there, I'm just open. I'm trying to learn, man. Shit, I want to know what this thing is about. I am not afraid of, quote, death, because if there's a belief in me, and I try to avoid too much belief, I don't believe in death. I believe in pain, and the process. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. What I teach my sons and daughters is I teach them that what we started with, white supremacy was a tool of the real oligarchs, who I consider anti-human. They may not even be of Earth. Be truthful, because they are so, I can't figure for the life of me. Look at all creatures on the planet. Pick them. Ants, they can have little rifts, but they always take care of the group. How in the hell is humanity is doing this, and especially from the top? That seems like somebody else. We're under assault in a different way. Different way. And I'm like, white supremacy is a tool of that assault. And if we get caught, in my opinion, too deep into it, Because I also came up under the influence of Brother Honorable Elijah Muhammad and that. But now I start saying, there's something going on here that's an attack on people, and it's being run by what we think are people. Because I just wonder if they were out the picture, how would the world be? If they were out the picture, how would it be? How would it be? Now that don't mean I'm gonna rush out here and grab me a white girl, and do that. I mean, I still have that in my head because I can't trust it, or that I'm gonna sit up there and be that, this, that, and the other. It's that I just want some damn answers.
Yeah.
So
When I first heard that you were going to have a discussion about like white supremacy and maybe the idea that there is no such thing as white supremacy, I started I started unpacking that.
Yeah.
And I said, now, what does he really mean? Because white supremacy is a misnomer. Because first of all, there's no white people, but let's say there's white people.
Right.
White is not supreme.
Right.
Okay. And that's why people talk about white in terms of white fragility, because they're offended by the term white supremacy. Okay. So we have that on the one hand. Then on the other hand, we have the system of white supremacy. Now that's different from an idea that white people are supreme, which we reject out of hand.
genetics show that.
Thank you. So then, but the system is undeniable. The system of white supremacy existed before there was a country. The system of white supremacy has, I was getting a headache this morning just reading the laws around white supremacy, how they so intricately created the laws of this country to repress us and suppress our every thought, movement, and ability to be progressive. Frederick Douglass pointed out many times that they didn't do that because we were inferior or they thought we were inferior. They did that because they knew we weren't.
Right.
So
That,
they
the
tried to
original
handicap
slaves,
us.
they were trying to get the best
We
of
can't
us.
let them read.
They were creaming the crap.
We
Who-
can't let them go to school.
Right.
We can't let them do anything that would, because and even when we came out of slavery, we came out of slavery skilled. And that's what launched that whole
Look at the history
period.
of Jefferson. He was
After
beast
slavery,
with-
that whole period where they started the lynchings and the bombings and the Tulsas and the Chicagos and the Wilmingtons and all of those places where our people were very prosperous with banks and everything that you could get in a capitalist society. They weren't going to let us have it. And when they didn't bomb us, riot, shoot everybody, run everybody out of town,
Do drugs in there.
they'll put a highway through the middle. Okay? And thank you, or drugs. So we have this system that's in place. That's our enemy. Now, Neely Fuller said, if you don't understand the system of white supremacy, everything you see happening is going to be confusing. And I thought about that when Donald Trump was being elected, because I saw white people voting for him. Those white people were voting against their own interests. They're voting for a millionaire becoming billionaire who was sucking them dry, taking all their money, not, taking away health care, doing everything that was going to affect them negatively if they weren't rich. Okay, so there was a tiny minority of people who would benefit from a Trump presidency, but the mass of white people were not going to benefit from a Trump presidency. They were just getting chunked.
That's
We
why.
need to
That's
set up
why
a-
white people
But
are
they
dangerous.
still voted for him.
That's why white people are dangerous. That's why Hitler was able to do what he did
Right.
because of a psychological term called conformity.
Right.
So you might have the majority of white people, and you might have some good white people over here, but because they don't want to feel alienated, they'll go along with the majority, and that's the danger of white supremacy.
And I want to say this, man. I appreciate everyone being on this podcast. We really got to cut this short, but we have to have a part two. I got you. I'm gonna let everybody close out. But seriously, yeah, I definitely enjoyed this discussion, and this showed how people from different walks of life, even though we still have that common interest, that same co-op when it comes to the love for our people. So I want to say I appreciate everybody that's on this platform today, and I'm gonna let everybody close out. The Queen.
No, let me talk about. I guess my turn on white supremacy, man. Chill out. I
got a meeting.
Okay, well, bye. So, I appreciate every one of y'all too, because y'all bring a lot of knowledge to the table. What I would say is, if I was teaching my kids about white supremacy, is I try to teach my kids new age skill sets to defeat certain things. You guys are historians. I would call y'all historians. So your method of teaching is going to be a lot different from the newer age. Just like the evolution of basketball, the same thing. It's no right and there's no wrong. But what I have learned is our thought process brings reality. So if you think that is white supremacy out there, there's going to be white supremacy for you. Now, back in the 1940s and things that when we couldn't get housing, when we couldn't open our own banks, I agree 100% that there were major influences stopping. But like Shaq said, it's not a white thing, it's a power thing. It just happens to be the white people have more power than the blacks, if you say. They have more power. So that's why because we're sitting here saying white supremacists when I would say you are black supremacists. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with thinking you're supreme. It's nothing wrong with thinking you're supreme. Now, if you abuse that, that's a different thing. That's an abuse of power. That's why people are getting killed. The cops run the cops. The white people run the cops. Well, we need to integrate more black people. And then when we do, look what happened to the young guy that got killed by the black people. So it's an abuse of power rather than a white and black thing. So I try to teach my kids, when you get the power, then you have to say so. So you have to get the power, and then power comes with responsibility. Yeah. So I'm going to give you a quick story. I moved to Maryland, and I was a felon.
All right.
I was a felon. I did 8 years in the penitentiary. So I'm not just no kid that hasn't went through nothing. I spent 8 years. So I've been on the other side of the road before, right? Came home, opened my own business, got educated. I had to educate myself first so I can have a different mentality of this, I hate to say it, nigga mentality.
What happened tomorrow?
But that being said, I got to move away to Maryland, live in D.C. area, and diversify myself, and seen a lot of cultures in that area. I developed friendships with Africans, Indians, Jewish people. My Jewish guy, Jonathan, he was one of my best buddies. He was a white guy. Man, he came to me, didn't know me from work. Asked me because him and his wife were different. He was a Jew and she wasn't. So long story short, they had to get married. They already had a wedding. Legally married, but they wanted a ceremony. So in his religion, in her religion, the conflicted. So he came and got me and said, "Man, can you do my wedding?" I went to this elite golfing clubs or whatever they had. I'm talking about everybody had Bentleys, everything. The reason why I'm saying this is because when I went in there and gave that, and I never did no preaching or nothing. I never did that. They wrote me the vows. He thought I can get away with it because I was a charismatic guy. Man, after that thing, I was the most powerful person in that room at that time. Okay? These people thought I was somebody at that time. Of course I'm somebody, but they thought I was big time. Man, I had millionaires giving me their business card, wanting to do business with me, all kinds of stuff like that, wanting to network with me. The point of that being is your mentality dictates your power, and your power dictates where you go in life. Yeah. So my kids, they're going to learn. You need to know this of because you have to safeguard yourself from certain things like police encounters and all that. You need to know when to shut your mouth. You need to know when to do what to survive. Then that's just the culture of this white supremacy. But as far as getting money and empowering your neighborhood and your family, they don't have nothing to do with that, because you don't even know how to clean your own neighborhoods. You don't even know how to stop killing each other. You don't even know how to go get a job to take care of your family with all these kids out here needing all this financial aid from the government that keeps us enslaved. All this free money they give you, food stamps, Section 8, all this stuff. So when you see people that want to take it from you, then now it's white supremacy. No, motherfucker, just go get a job like everybody else and work like everybody else and build yourself up. Because when you have the power, you have some say-so.
Okay. Wow. Well, just my take, I think that you can make it anyway, you know, and that would just be the bottom line to it. Whatever it is that you want to do, you got to go after it like your life depends on it, because it does, you know. And like, I just don't want people to be discouraged before they even get started, because I'm talking about my own personal experience. I feel like my life is where it is because of the choices that I've made.
Right.
Bad and good, but especially the bad. The bad choices that I make stands out as to the position that I may be in. So let's say that I wish I had more money. It more than likely is because of either a bad spending habit or a bad decision that I made to do this investment instead of that investment. And I would teach my kids to just have self-determination and
Discipline.
just go after whatever it is that you want without putting any negative thoughts in their head about achieving these things. And you know, if they come up against these walls, I mean, in whatever might be out there, then go harder. Les Brown said, if it's hard, do it hard. You have to go that much harder and then become that much stronger. And then in that journey, you'll find that you're the one that's actually supreme.
Right.
And that's my take on this. But I think that we all could come back. And bro, you brought up a great point, man. Each one of you are brilliant. And I mean, I see brilliance. And then I think a true mark of somebody who is brilliant is to deny it. I see in your face when I said you was brilliant.
Well, I consider myself a student.
Yeah.
I still do.
Yeah.
And that's but you know, man,
Historians,
the
man.
wise man is the person who says, I know nothing.
Right.
And so, like, just from you saying that, man, I think it lends credibility to what I'm saying. But I didn't want to cut anybody short, so just in closing, we could just kind of have like a final statement, maybe a minute from each
Mine is
body, and
quick.
we'll wrap it.
Thanks for having us here, you know, and I appreciate it. And I'm willing to come back if you want, you know,
Definitely.
to give some individual stuff, and I'd suggest it for others. So thank you. Love y'all.
Man,
Yeah.
you too, bro.
Of course, y'all know that, but now y'all know.
Yes.
You too, bro.
I guess once again, I would like to thank you for, you know, having me on the program. And I think I'll say it like Mao. Oppose what the enemy supports and support what the enemy opposes. I think that's,
You'll be right.
I think that, you know, our eventual goal should be separation from this open enemy. And I think that he is an open enemy, and he's going to stop at nothing to see us exterminated. And I think for us as a people that we should, like in the Quran, we should want for our brother what we want for ourselves. And I'll end it with that.
Yeah, I would just say that we have to strengthen the bond that we have with each other. We need to build a Africana culture, a black culture amongst ourselves. We're not all born the same. We don't, you know, but we have to build that bond for our own protection, and that's so we need to study, we need to organize, we need to depend on each other.
For sure.
I think that everyone that spoke before me kind of said everything. I think I always think about expanding the mind, expanding thought, expanding ideas, because two things can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
For example, There is a system of white supremacy that has been organized and mobilized against us.
Sure.
That's true. But what's also true is what I said before, we're undefeated. And that we can achieve whatever it is we want to achieve, no matter what system is arrayed against us.
That's right.
You know, a good life is not characterized by ease, it's characterized by how you handle the struggle that's in front of you. Operating on the principle of Ma'at, making love the highest principle and order that we operate with each other, giving energy to light rather than darkness, is the closest, because you said new age, you know, it's like coming into that concept that what we give energy to is what we're gonna have. Okay, and that's very powerful. That is the power. So for us to know that no matter what systems are out here arrayed against us, we have the ability to give energy to that which we want to have, that we can build the world that we deserve to live in and pass that to our children.
All right, you guys. Legendary People Podcast. Legendary people, legendary stories. It's lit for us. We'll see y'all next time. Later.